It was a warm Friday evening in Bangalore, and the long weekend just 2 days away had 5 friends: Raj, Priya, Anil, Sanya, and Vikram, buzzing with excitement. They had been toying with the idea of a spontaneous trip, and Goa, with its sun-soaked beaches and vibrant nightlife, seemed like the perfect escape. After a quick discussion, they decided to make it happen. With excitement in the air, they began frantically checking for tickets online. Raj, the tech-savvy one, quickly opened multiple travel apps on his phone, while Anil and Priya did the same on their laptops. But as the minutes ticked by, their faces fell. Every bus, train, and even the more expensive flights were fully booked. It seemed like everyone in Bangalore had the same idea. Just as they were about to give up, Vikram's phone pinged with a notification. He had found something, a bus that made a weekly trip to Goa. There was a moment of silence as everyone looked at Vikram in disbelief. "Are you serious?" Sanya asked, her eyes wide with hope. "Yes, but there's a catch," Vikram replied hesitantly. "The bus leaves from a pickup point outside an abandoned hotel in a really shady part of town." The news was met with a mix of skepticism and unease. Raj's brows furrowed, and Priya shuddered at the thought of being in such a place at night. But with no other options and the allure of Goa still calling to them, they decided to take a chance. They booked the tickets, trying to brush off their doubts as just nerves. The day of the journey arrived, and as they made their way to the pickup point, an unsettling atmosphere seemed to descend.
Parked outside. It was an old model, its paint chipped and faded, with windows so dark that nothing inside was visible. The bus looked like it belonged to another era, a relic from the past that had somehow found its way into the present. Despite the growing tension, the friends exchanged nervous glances and decided to board the bus. Stepping inside, they were met with a surprising sight. The interior was unexpectedly well decorated. Velvet seats, dimly lit chandeliers, and vintage curtains gave the space an odd but strangely comforting charm. It was as if they had stepped into a different world, one that didn't match the bus's exterior at all, but the relief was short-lived. The conductor, an elderly man with deep-set eyes, moved silently through the aisle, his expression unreadable. The other passengers were equally strange, sitting quietly with their faces obscured by shadows. No one spoke a word, and the silence was almost oppressive. As the journey began, the bus rolled through the dark, deserted streets, and the friends tried to settle in, but a sense of unease lingered. A couple of hours into the trip, Anil, who had been unusually quiet, dozed off. His head slumped against the window, and soon he was lost in a vivid dream. In his dream, Anil saw the bus speeding down a winding road, the brakes screeching as it careened out of control. The next moment, there was a loud crash, and the bus was engulfed in flames. Anil jolted awake, his heart pounding, as the vision of the burning bus lingered in his mind. He sat up, breathless and pale, and shouted to his friends, "We need to get off this bus. I just had the worst dream. It crashed, and we didn't make it." Raj and Vikram tried to calm him down, reassuring him it was just a dream, but Anil's fear was contagious. Priya, always the practical one, suggested they ask the driver to stop for a quick restroom break, hoping the fresh air would clear Anil's head. Raj got up and made his way to the front of the bus to speak to the driver, but as he reached the driver's cabin, his blood ran cold. The driver's seat was occupied by a headless figure, the body calmly steering the wheel as if nothing was out of the ordinary. The sight was so shocking that Raj froze for a moment, unable to process what he was seeing. Terrified, Raj stumbled back to his friends, his face ashen. "There's no way," he stammered. "The driver, he has no head." The others looked at him in disbelief. "Raj, stop messing with us," Vikram said, trying to laugh it off, though his voice wavered. Sanya and Priya exchanged worried glances, unsure whether Raj was serious or just trying to scare them. To prove him wrong, Vikram and Priya decided to check for themselves. But when they peered into the cabin, they saw a man sitting there with a deep cut running across his face. his eyes blood red. He turned to look at them, and his gaze was so cold, so devoid of life, that they felt a chill run down their spines. "The bus will stop in 5 minutes," the driver said in a voice that was more of a growl than a human speech. Shaken, they hurried back to their seats, unable to explain what they had just witnessed. True to the driver's words, the bus came to a stop shortly after, but the place where it halted was far from reassuring. It was a desolate area, surrounded by nothing but darkness and the faint rustle of the wind. There were no buildings, no signs of life, just an unsettling silence that seemed to stretch on forever. As they stepped off the bus, the friends felt an overwhelming sense of dread. But before they could fully comprehend their surroundings, an old, decrepit hotel materialized out of the darkness. It was as if the building had appeared out of thin air, its worn-out facade barely holding together. Desperate for some semblance of normalcy, and with hunger gnawing at their stomachs, they decided to enter the hotel. Inside, the place was just as eerie as it looked from the outside. The furniture was covered in dust, and the air was thick with the smell of something long forgotten. They found a table and sat down, trying to shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As they waited for their food, Vikram's eyes wandered to a dusty newspaper lying on a nearby table. Curious, he picked it up, only to realize it was dated 21 years ago. His heart skipped a beat as he skimmed through the pages, stopping at an article about a bus accident. The story described a horrific crash involving a bus that had slammed into a hotel, causing a massive fire. Vikram's breath caught in his throat when he saw the accompanying photograph. The driver in the picture, the one who had died in the accident, was the same man who had been driving their bus. His hands shook as he read on, discovering that the hotel had been the very one they were now sitting in. The same hotel that had burned down in the aftermath of the crash. In a panic, Vikram rushed to show the article to his friends. Their faces turned ashen as they realized the horrifying truth. They were caught in a nightmare, reliving the tragic events of the past. Just then, the faint smell of smoke began to permeate the air. It grew stronger with each passing second, until thick, black smoke started billowing out from the kitchen. The friends tried to run, but the smoke was too dense, suffocating them as it filled the room. One by one, they succumbed, losing consciousness as the world around them faded to black. When they awoke, they were no longer in the hotel, but in a bright, sterile hospital room. Disoriented and confused, they struggled to piece together what had happened. A doctor informed them they had been found unconscious on a deserted road, with no explanation as to how they had gotten there. But as the fog of confusion slowly lifted, they realized with horror that one of them was missing. Anil's bed was empty, and no one had any idea where he was. The trip that had started as a spontaneous adventure had turned into a nightmare, leaving them with more questions than answers. The question remained, what really happened to them that night?